Today, I want to talk to you guys about all of the rumors we've seen over the last couple of weeks around A potential racing or FPV drone from DJI, and B, a second set or a version 2 set of FPV goggles. Now, in this video, I want to talk about some of the things that I've discussed on my live stream for those who haven't seen that, as well as some of the things I've put in posts on RC groups and other places too. Now, I do have to walk a bit of a tightrope on this one, and there are some things that I am aware of. However, I have no intention of breaking any NDAs, but what I am going to do is just cover some of the things that I've talked about in the past and give you guys my overall thoughts on what this situation currently is. Now, just before I do that, this video is going out as a premiere. I will be in the comments of this video when it's gone out. If you've got any questions as you are watching this video, if it's in the premiere, please do put them in and I will answer them if I can. Further to that, if you do have any questions as we're going along, please put them in and I will try to answer them as soon as I possibly can. Anyway, let's try and go down the rabbit hole and unfold, or unwrap I should say, what all of this is all about. If we head over to the desktop, this really started some time ago, and there are two things at play here. There are rumors that there is going to be an FPV or racing quad, and there are rumors that there is going to be a digital FPV system version 2. Now, we need to separate these two things out because they are two very separate things, but they are linked in some ways as well. Now, just to talk about the drone first of all. Some time ago, this image appeared online from this usual Twitter account that does tend to be able to post or leak stuff with regards to DJI upcoming releases. All we had was this leak around a potential racing drone from DJI. The forums went alight, and there's been sort of whispers for quite some time that DJI might be getting into FPV. There's been various threads and forums put up about it, and I've been very adamant from day one that DJI are not going to make a racing drone. We also had this image here appear online as well, showing again something that looked very similar to a racing aircraft, but no one really knew what it was. Now, as I have just said, I have strongly thought that they are not going to make a racing drone. I just don't think that is the market for DJI. However, what does make sense is DJI getting involved in the FPV scene, because it is something that has been growing over the last few years, and whilst at the moment it is open to anybody to get involved in, it does require a certain level of skill. And if you take what DJI does best, they are very good at taking something that isn't necessarily that easy or something that is a kit form and putting out a good off-the-shelf product. Now, over the last couple of weeks, we've seen more and more leaks, and we've now this week had these three images here. I almost said two. This, an image of the quad itself, which appears to be a FPV or racing quad, and this other set of images showing it in its box. Now, just to be clear, when we get to this situation, it usually means something is coming. It isn't the first time that we've seen leaks from this Twitter account, and it is fairly reliable overall. This, what we are seeing here, certainly looks to be a fairly finished product, or at least an end of production, which you would call design verification test, DVT or PVT, just to make sure it's really as they expect it to be. This to me looks very much a production related model. Now, just to explain what I think this is, my opinion on this, and it's been the same opinion that I've had from day one, is that this is an FPV drone. It is not a racing drone, but it is going to be an off-the-shelf drone to allow people to get that FPV kind of cinematic footage. If you take into account what we get on our current aircraft from, say, the Mavic and things like that, it's very standard type of footage that, you know, you can look up, down, left, right, but it's really, that's it. I think DJI are interested in getting into providing an aircraft that can provide that more exciting FPV footage when they're chasing cars and things like that. Now, just to be clear, I don't think DJI are going to give you an off-the-shelf Betaflight quad. I do not think for 1 minute it is going to have that same level of features that you get from something like Betaflight, with air mode, with total being able to do flips and rolls. it remains to be seen, but there are, I should say, have some reservations that they will go that far. What I do think they will do, though, is provide something that is more than we've ever had today, with stabilized footage on board. You know, if we look at this, there's clearly a camera on the front. There looks to be some object sensing cameras down here. I could be wrong, but it does look that is the case. There's a stabilized gimbal, or at least a vertically stabilized gimbal, and we know DJI has software stabilization like they do on the Osmo Action. Then, looking at the mirror image on the back, we can see that there appears to be a GPS antenna there. And then we put the 4 motors and everything else. So for me, I think DJI are going to build an FPV style cinematic quad for people to get into FPV style of flying. I don't believe this aircraft for 1 minute is going to be for the current FPV crowd. I think really it is for the Mavic type user or the new user that wants to get into this kind of flying rather than standard drone flying. I think for the traditional FPV racer or just FPV freestyle flyer, I think there's probably going to be 1 or 2 many restrictions compared to what you're used to having on Betaflight. Now, when we take a close look at this pack, there are some interesting things. First of all, there's been some leaked images of the new remote controller, and we saw that some time ago with this image here. And as you can see, it looks to be a brand new remote alongside the current set of digital FPV goggles. Further to that, in the box, as you can see, we're again seeing the FPV goggles being in place. And on the front, we've got that new design remote controller and what looks to be very similar to the current set of FPV goggles. Now, it's clear that this is going to be a kit and it's going to be available to buy off the shelves just like any other aircraft. People have been asking, what about the specs? What about the camera? What about the range? Things like that remain to be seen. What I expect this to do is as follows. I expect it to be a product that is capable of recording in either 1080p 60 or 4K 60. I would expect it to have around 15 minutes flight time, and I would expect it to have all of the usual features we've come to expect from DJI. So it will have GPS return to home. It will have multiple flight modes, from beginner all the way up to like an expert mode. And I would expect it to use a proprietary battery like we've seen from DJI in the past, maybe have object avoidance, and really be a product that gives you an off-the-shelf capable FPV drone, but not quite as extreme as we get from Betaflight. Now, as for price on this, I've seen some people quoting some prices around $1,000 and things like that. I would be astonished if this was under $1,000. I'm expecting this to be more around Mavic 2 Zoom, Mavic 2 Pro money, $1,200 to $1,300, or say $1,200 to $1,400 is the price area I would expect this to be in, simply because of the current pricing on the FPV system. That is already $800 or $900, and you need to add the price of the aircraft on top of that. I don't think for one moment we're going to see this below $1,000. I honestly don't. Not yet. Anyway, unless there is going to be a price drop on the current FPV system. Now, that really is all I've got to say on that. Now, as for when, I think it's going to be January or February, because if it was the holiday season, we'd have seen the release of this already. I think it's going to be a big push then, and I think DJI's market is very much going to be current Mavic style users, or new people wanting to get into drones and FPV specifically. I don't believe this product is aimed at racing one little bit, and I certainly don't really think it's aimed at the current FPV crowd, but that isn't to say you guys might not enjoy it, but I think it might feel a little bit watered down compared to what we've got already. Now, a few other interesting observations I just want to make on this before I move on. There's been a few comments about if DJI are going to get into this market, how are they going to handle the thousands of support requests when people start screwing these into the ground? Now, something I've seen on this, which I find very interesting, is if you look at this, there's quite a lot of visible screws on this product. We've got 4 here on the back arms. If we move around to the front, we can see that there's screws visible here, screws visible here. In some ways, it does make me wonder if this is going to be somewhat of a modular product with parts being available. So arms, for instance, on the back, you could have arms that clip in, remove the screws and the arms come out. On the front, you could have a section on the front that comes off if you were to damage it, and be able to replace the gimbal like that as well. Part of this side of it is what makes me think DJI are not going to give people an out-and-out racing drone, because the warranty liability for that would be massive. Just to shift back over to full, just to explain that, if DJI sold a product where there were suddenly thousands of people screwing him into the ground, they're going to have to then go through that whole process of understanding who did it themselves. Was it a warranty issue? Was it this or was it that? So my personal opinion on this is DJI are going to give a product that gives more than we get today with the Mavics, but it's not going to be quite to the level of what we've seen with Betaflight racing quads. However, they are also going to make it somewhat of a modular design that allows you to repair parts looking at those images. But that's just my thoughts on this, really. So that is really it on the FPV racing drone. I don't think it's racing. I think it's FPV, and I think it's going to be a very interesting product, but it's going to be interesting to see how it leads on. Now, with regards to an FPV System version 2, this sort of leads into it, because over the last few months, there's been talk of the FPV system being no longer available. There's been one or two dealers who've said it's end of life and it's no longer able to be ordered. However, it's been available to order directly from DJI and others, and this has led speculation that there's going to be a version 2. Now, what I want to say first of all is this, is there has been loads of images posted online. We've had this one here, we've got this thing here, which I saw today, we've got this thing here, we've got this one here, which is like at the top of that thread, and then this one here, and there was one shown with like a version 2 on the side there. There is nothing confirmed on a version 2 FPV system at this time. There are no leaks from places that I would expect to see leaks if there was going to be a version 2. Whilst there are renderings going around that people are making up, the usual places like this Twitter account are not posting anything about it. So I don't fully believe that there's going to be a version 2. However, that isn't to say we might not see some alignment between the products. And just to explain what I mean by that, one good reason for this product being unavailable for a short period of time was in October, DJI have had their holiday, or I think it was September, there was a 2-week down period in China. And on top of that, the restrictions that we've had in global supply through air travel and boats, and the fact that you can't ship product like you used to be able to do it. Add on top of that, if they are doing this aircraft, they must be in the current position of building up product supply for a combo like this. So it isn't really far-fetched to have found that the current FPV system has had short supply, because if they are getting ready to launch this product, a lot of the supply is going to be going to that. It isn't going to be going to the general sales market, because they're going to be getting ready for that. So I did just want to say that I don't think there has been any credible leaks on this, but I do think there could be an alignment, and I do think that we could see a very minor update. People have been posting things like, is it going to have analog OLED screens and all new design? That isn't going to happen. That I am 99.9% about. What I will say is this. If we are going to see a version 2 FPV system, it is going to be because it's going to align with this, and this has required some changes. And if we take a look at what DJI have done in the past with their radio systems, this can actually give you a hint of where things will probably go. Now, I made a video some time back on OcuSync 2, and I made this video to explain to you guys what the differences are between all of the FPV systems on the DJI aircraft. It's quite a long video, and I go into great depth. It isn't updated for the current FPV system, I'll add that first, but it talks about OcuSync, OcuSync 2, the white goggles, the goggles RE, and it goes right through explaining all of the differences between the systems. Now, this video was made before the current FPV system came out, but it does give us an idea of where the next system could end up. If we scroll through, it takes a look at some of the image transmission information as well as the chipsets used in it. It's worth a look if you haven't seen it, actually. It is quite an interesting video, although I made it, I am saying that. Now, in this video, there is a chart. Let me just make this full screen. Where is it gone? That one there. And there's a couple of charts in this video. And these charts cover the differences between the system and the compatibility on the systems with the goggles and the remotes. And if you actually look at it, it is quite interesting. The original OcuSync was 2.4 gigahertz, 720p, single band, 2.4 gigahertz. We then had the release of the OcuSync Air system with the goggles RE, which was again 720p max, but it moved up to dual band, and we call that OcuSync 1.5. That's the unofficial term for it. We then had OcuSync 2.0, which first appeared with the Phantom 4 Pro Vision 2 and the Mavic 2 Pro series, or Mavic 2 Pro and Zoom. Let me just go back to that before stop it playing. That had 1080p OcuSync alongside dual band, and whilst the Mavic Pro could do 1080p, it didn't work properly, and there's a long explanation I won't go into about that. But OcuSync 2 had proper dual band 1080p video transmission. So if you actually look at how DJI do this, the system generally goes 720p single band, 720p dual band, 1080p dual band, or 1080p single band, 1080p dual band. Now, when we look at the current FPV system and where it falls into this, it falls into 720p or up to 720p single band. It is 5 gigahertz. It isn't 2.4. But there is nothing to say that if there was an aircraft to use this system, I would expect it to use the dual band OcuSync like we've seen on the other systems. DJI are not going to just make it 5 gigahertz on its own, in my opinion, and this new FPV quad is very likely to be dual band, and I would expect to see that maybe transition over to the new Version 2 FPV system. However, that isn't confirmed, and that isn't to say that it is going to happen. But there is a possibility that we are going to see a transition to an improved system. What that would mean for air units and things like that, I honestly don't think that they would move the full FPV system over to 2.4 and 5 gigs. I think from an air unit point of view, I think the current air unit would remain at 5 gigs only. The Vista would remain at 5 gigs only, but you could see a new air unit which is dual band but with backwards compatibility on the goggles as well. Now, there is something else I do just want to add on the FPV system, is that the current goggles are believed to actually have 2.4 and 5 gigahertz hardware on board already. There are some FCC and radio test filings that do suggest that the system is capable of dual band, but it isn't currently used. Now, as for a lot of the other specs that I've seen hinted at out there, to be honest, most of it is nonsense. I am not expecting OLED, there is not going to be analog, and there is certainly not going to be Fat Shark support. You might see a bump in resolution in the screens to allow for a 1080p feed. You might see some other changes alongside dual band, maybe increased range and things like that. But if there was to be a V2, I am certainly not expecting it to be a major change. And really, I'm expecting the change to follow what we've seen on the aircraft release when that comes out, rather than it being an all-out new FPV system, and I would expect it to be fully backwards compatible as well. That's where I'm at. Now, that is pretty much it. I just wanted to put my take on this. As I've said, this video has gone out as a premiere, so please do put any questions in. I'll be hanging around for a little bit after this one has finished. I've not gone live today, but this one is going as a premiere instead. If you'd like to support the channel, there are links in the description of this video to the current FPV system. I'll put a link into the new FPV system if something ever arrives, or a new FPV quad when that happens as well. You can also watch the ads at the start of the video if you'd like to support us too. Please also in the comments of this video, put your thoughts on this new system. Do you think this quad is going to release? No one fully knows yet. As I've said, those who are under NDA are not going to break them. Much of what I've discussed here is what I have already discussed in the past. There is nothing new here, and it is purely my opinion on top of that. Further to that, if you guys are interested in finding out more about this OcuSync, please do check out the link to this video. I'll put it in the description of this video as well. It doesn't contain the current FPV system, but it is an interesting video going over the whole thing, and it is worth checking out as well. Anyway, that is it for this one. Thank you for watching. As I said, please do hit that subscribe button, give us a like, and I will do another video again soon.